Hello to all of you watching this broadcast right now. That's really fantastic. I'm very happy to be here, very honored to be asked to speak with all of you and for all of you. I want to invite everyone that is listening on this to interact with this conversation. And in fact, as you do listen to me, I'll do the intro thing in just a moment, but as you do listen, it might be helpful to have a pen and some paper with you because honestly, I'm going to do a couple magic tricks here, and I want you to be a part of that. And it's going to require these tools because we're virtual, and I can't just like pull something out from behind your ear. So we're going to do a couple magic tricks here. And the first one, actually, if you don't have that pen and paper yet, it's okay. If you want to just like put this into your brain right now, but I'm going to ask you the question: why do you think we engage with universities? Why do we put together internship programs? Why do we build those relationships? What's the point of all of that? Right now you might be thinking, okay, well I got to hire some talents. You might be thinking, okay, well it's a great way for them to get their foot in the door and understand the work that they're going to be doing for my company. And I mean, at the end of the day, I need some good employees. So what better to do than an internship? Well, second question then is, what do you think those interns are looking to get out of that? Do you think it's the paycheck? Do you think it's the experience? Do you think it's the connections? Do you think it's something else? All right, so you might have a couple of thoughts in your mind right now. It's a little bit of our magic trick that we're going to come back to in a bit. Okay, so my name is Joe Peschel. Sorry for touching the mic right there. My name is Joe Peschel. I'm the program director and one of the co-founders of something called The Commons here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Commons has been around for 6 years now, but I've been around for a little bit longer than that. My background is in design, more specifically branding, user experience design, and I ran a web design and development studio for about 6.5 years. It was based out of Chicago, so go Chicago there. I lived in Milwaukee though, the entire time, so go Milwaukee for that one. And our main job was to build scalable prototype software for entrepreneurs. So we were kind of like the tech team for hire. During the course of all of this, I built probably about 35 different companies, all different industries, all different shapes and sizes. All the founders that we worked with had unique industry insight. All the founders that we worked with had the skills to be great leaders. They just did not have that skill to build and to design the product. And so we did that for them. I took my user experience and branding skill sets and applied it into the business strategy that we worked with those clients on. And through all of this, got a lot of good experience, right? Interestingly, when I was going through school and studying all of this stuff, I had a couple of internships, and quite honestly, I asked myself if I was really getting the type of value I needed out of those internships. I also start to question, as I reflect back on it, whether those companies were having those interns for the right reasons or not. Were they really engaging with universities? And that's what I want to talk about today, is the engagement with university, the real, authentic engagement. And that's where we take it a step further. So after I ran that studio for about 6 years, built a bunch of tech startups, I started to get the itch to, okay, so maybe this is a little bit self-serving because of the business development side of things. Like, I had to drum up work for my own business. But I really did start to find an interest and a passion in community development. And that led me to seek a entrepreneurial community, a creative, a technology community here in the Milwaukee area, because I was driving down to Chicago like every other night, and that was getting to be a grind. I just met this great woman. I wanted to spend more time with her. I eventually ended up marrying her. So well worth it. I got to stop spending so much time in Chicago, spend more time in Milwaukee. Where's my network? And was seeking that, and it was quite honestly a little bit difficult to find. Until one day I ended up in this event where they were doing a pitch competition. And hey, here's a bunch of tech startup founders getting on stage and pitching their ideas. Too cool. I'm home, I'm with my people, this is fantastic. Look down the road, like, hey, we're all nodding along, we all like sing from the same hymnal right here. So afterwards, why don't we go out and get a beer and talk a little bit more? We did that, and from that sparked this like interesting little connection between, I think there are about 6 of us or so. And And we formed Startup Milwaukee out of that. In fact, later this morning, I believe you're going to be talking to Matt Cordio, one of the other co-founders. So you're going to get a little bit of the story and insight there as to how Startup Milwaukee came to be. But we ran a ton of different programs, all designed to bring community together, to give a safe space for Milwaukee's entrepreneurs, technologists, creatives, to make those connections, build community, and do interesting things together. And when we saw students come through that program, which the program was primarily focused on the professional market, but when we saw a student come through, we would see them at the next event. We would see them at the next event. We would see them at the next one. They're like, hey, I'm doing a side hustle. Hey, I just got hired by this company. They were telling us we had never really been exposed to this type of work, which begs the question, well, what type of work are you talking about? And they're like, stuff that's meaningful, stuff that has impact, stuff that I get to lend my creative brain and it challenges me and it does new things for me. And I feel like I get to be a part of the growth of this community. And so right there, they got into this mindset of real authentic engagement. There's something really important that happened right there. And so in our brains, I'm still running this consultancy and still one of the, doing the Startup Milwaukee thing. And I'm like, there's something here that we can lean into. So found a couple other folks that had that similar mindset. And we said, why don't we create a more concrete, tangible way for these students to find their pathway, kind of get onboarded into the entrepreneurial and innovation community. If we're out to build an ecosystem, it doesn't start at 20 years old. It's got to be inclusive of a lot of different skill sets, a lot of different ages. So we created the Commons out of this. And I swear this whole preamble is going to go somewhere, all right? So we created the Commons as this strategy, this methodology to build a more vibrant innovation ecosystem, one that's connected, one that's inclusive, and very diverse. We brought together all these different people. In fact, the first meeting that we had to kind of pitch this idea was with 20 of the 21 local university presidents and chancellors, like high-profile names from all the schools in southeast Wisconsin. I think I had worn a suit like 3 times prior to that day, and I got a nice new one for that meeting because this is like, I am doing something very professional right now, and I got all dressed up. I sweat straight through that thing. It was a great meeting though. So we pitched this idea, hey, like what if we tried this weird thing and brought together all of your students? And they said yes. Now it helped that we were like, it's not going to cost you anything. All you got to do is refer some students into this program and we're going to see where it goes. We ran a pilot experiment. We were thinking like entrepreneurs, drinking our own Kool-Aid. We ran the pilot. And that was 6 years ago now. We had 143 students from 19 different universities join us for this thing. Absolutely bonkers insane. We basically took over an entire neighborhood in southern Milwaukee here and turned it into an innovation campus for a weekend. And that's all it was. It's just a weekend long. But from that, we learned a lot. We learned really what it took to engage these students, how to challenge them in meaningful ways, how to offer them something different than the classroom. And this is where our conversation goes in the next step. That idea of engaging in a different way and creating that type of impact, it infiltrated into the Commons, our team, and the cultural values that we have. Things like building that feeling of family and connectedness in our programs, having that eternal optimism to say, you're capable of doing something, and let's pursue that. The idea of constantly growing, the idea of imagining what if we, that phrase is really important to us. What if we suggest that anything is possible, especially if we're going to do it together. And then finally, this idea that there's opportunity all around us. And for you all listening, I think that there's opportunity all around you as well. And so as we grew the Commons, we actually grew beyond just the collegiate student market and into high school a little bit, and now even more into the professional markets, nonprofit organizations, working with institutions like that to help them define strategy, to build that regional culture of innovation, and understand that there's opportunities all around them to do things a little bit differently. All right? And the different thing here is the real engagement piece. And this is where I told you, I swear my story is going to kind of like loop back a little bit. I mentioned that I when I was running that consultancy, I did a lot on the user experience side of things. And so I want to talk about using the principles of user experience as a way to build meaningful engagement with your organization into academia and for students. So how am I doing on time?
Yeah.
Great.
Let's go 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. Very cool. All right. So then, when I asked you the magic trick questions at the beginning, like why are we putting together these engagement opportunities? Why are we creating internships? Why are we engaging with universities? And what do students need out of that? And that's the user experience question that I always had in my mind. Really, what is it, that persona of the students? What is going through their minds and what are they seeking at the moment when the idea of internships and engaging with the workforce start to come into their minds? And if you were saying things like, yeah, I got to get that paycheck, or yeah, I just like need to get something for my resume, I want to challenge you to think beyond that. And by the way, like everything that I'm going over right now, it's applicable even if you don't work directly with universities and students. It's applicable for your own workforce. It's applicable for your staff, your teammates, et cetera. So let's go back to the student persona here. Worked with thousands of different students at this point. And every one of them coming from different backgrounds, every one of them having different skills, pursuing different degrees, different levels of experience. But all of them really shared this similar mentality of, what the heck is going on right now? What is next for me? Who's out there that can help me? And what do I need to do to get to that next step? Those questions are really critical and they're universal, right? If you're asking yourself those questions, if a student is asking themselves those questions, they've got that growth mindset and you can do a lot with that. So what is their need? That's the user experience mantra right here. And when you think of a good product, a good application you might have used, something on your phone, some software that you might have used, all of this is designed very carefully by a user experience designer to make sure that you, the user, are having a pleasurable experience, you're able to navigate certain things, you understand that you have a need, you recognize that, and this piece of software or this product is providing you that solution. And you can do it with ease, right? And so that's where we very carefully will design experiences for these students. We'll very carefully try to understand what their needs are, who to be working with, and how really it can not only serve them, but in a really important way, serve you as the organization as well. Something that goes beyond just like, hey, sit at this desk, do this work, right? So here's where we're going to loop back to the beginning, our magic trick. We're going to do the magic trick again right now. It's going to change. I'm going to have a couple of different questions. So I hope you have your paper, your pen. I want you to reflect on a couple of these things. And this is a way that you can craft this great experience for a student. So I'm going to start at a foundational level, and I'm going to kind of move on up. And as you answer these questions, you're actually going to create something that is of meaning, valuable to the student, valuable to the young talent, valuable to your teammates, whomever you want to use as a context here, and then also valuable to you and your organization. Okay. So first of all, a key element is this change in perception, and that's really like a cultural thing. There's a couple of P's that we're going to go through here. So the first one is perception. And that's like a very cultural thing. So I mentioned a couple of our cultural values at the Commons. I could pick out any one of those and say, if I'm going to craft an experience, I would absolutely want young talent walking away remembering this cultural value, remembering this thing about how our company works and functions. And it goes way beyond like, this is what we produce and here's like the operational side of things. But really it's a feeling sort of thing. So I want you to think for a moment, maybe jot down a couple. What are some of those cultural elements of your organization that you would want a young student, some talent walking away remembering? Memorable stuff here. I hope you're not just writing down like beer taps or ping pong tables, because it does go beyond that as well. It's more of a feeling thing. Another way to think of this is if your staff talks about how the company functions and operates and talks about it, brags about it to their friends, what do you think they're saying? That's a good cultural value. Okay, so that's the perception piece. The next P is people, all right? I guarantee you that within your organization, it might even be you, but maybe it's not. Or maybe you want to give the opportunity to somebody else. Within your organization, there are a couple of key folks that you would be like, If we're going to have anyone interacting with students and leaving them with a positive perception and a positive experience, it's going to be these people. This one person, these two folks, they can come from any departments, anywhere within the organization. I'm actually going to guess they're probably not the C-level executives. They've got other things to be focused on right now. It's probably somebody that's a newer hire, maybe mid-career, but they've got that energy. They've got that message. They've got that sort of brand, that perception that you want young talent to walk away with. These are the folks that you want to write down. Just a first name is fine. Who might those people be? All right. That one's probably the easiest question of all of these, right? Those people usually come to mind very quickly. Okay, the next one. We had perception, we had people. The third P is possibility. Now, there's a temptation to be like, okay, I got a big chunk of work to do. I'm going to get an intern to do that. I want to challenge you to go a step further. I'm not saying abandon all of that, but a step further would suggest that there's a possibility that there's something else for this organization to do. There's something of like that innovation opportunity, that green space or blue ocean, something that maybe is on your roadmap that you haven't yet started to tackle. Maybe it's a new technology that you want to explore further. There is possibility within your industry, within your organization, to do something new and different. And who better to give a little bit of that brain space, have a young person think through that a little bit, do some of that research, get the ball rolling on it. They don't have to figure out everything. They're not going to be able to. They don't know everything about your organization, but they can help you explore the possibility. What's one of those things, one of those areas, something to explore further, could totally disrupt the way you do your operations? It's exciting, but it's also a big question mark. What's one of those possibilities? Okay, so you had the perception, people, possibility. The last one is the prospect. Okay, the prospect is the potential student that you might want to bring on for this, the young talent that you may be seeking. And when I ask this question, 99.9% of the time, they're like, well, it's like an engineering position, so we're going to go and find that engineering student. All right, that's a good, it's a good place to start, sure. But what we have seen through the Commons is that there are so many more people, prospects, to explore and consider before you use degree as your ultimate deciding factor of who to bring on, okay? And so what I want to do is you have your prospect, that's the obvious one. Go and find those people. But then give a little bit of attention to those that are the non-obvious folks. And a way to potentially find some of them is think about the team that you immediately work with, all of your coworkers right now. You know some of their backgrounds. You know about 70% of them are not doing a job that they got a degree in. They're not doing that job that they studied and got a degree in. Something changed. Their career paths changed. They learned something new. They got a new position, but they're doing really well. They're your coworkers. You like working with them. You probably want to work with more of those people. Who's that most non-obvious person that you work with? What did they study? What are some of their backgrounds and skills? Consider finding young talent that fits that mold as well. So that's your non-obvious prospect. Okay. So I just gave you 4 different facets to consider as you're thinking about creating a real, engaging, authentic and engaging experience for young talent so that you can more effectively position your company in a way to change perception with young minds, to find those that are non-obvious, to find people within your organization to pair up with them, and to give them a challenge, something to work on that explores new possibility within your organization and within your industry. That right there is a very robust framework to use as you think about how do we meaningfully engage with academia, with young talent. I guarantee that you will be able to change perception among young talent. They'll talk about you. They'll be like, this is exciting work that I'm doing, and that's a big thing. That's viral right there. But I'm not saying like to ditch the normal traditional internship. This is more of like an augmentation. It's something to bring alongside of it. And so those together, the 4 facets that I talked about, the idea of augmenting your normal internship, I hope this gives you a couple of different tactics and tools to use as you think about how to build more meaningful engagements. And how to adopt a little bit of this user experience mindset in all of it. Think about what are their needs? How can I be that good ecosystem player? Because that's what it all comes down to. This is a two-way street, and in an ecosystem, there's a lot of different users, a lot of different players. You're thinking about this one dimension right here, which is a really important one, but you can apply this mindset and this thinking to all the other different dimensions, how you work with other companies, how you work with local nonprofits, how you work with your business resource groups within your company, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on, of course. So, ta-da! That's the magic trick for us today. I hope these were a couple of good tools for you. Again, I'm Joe with the Commons. It's been a pleasure talking. I think we might do
a
couple of questions. Yeah.
And then, so over the 6 years, roughly how many students have gone through your program?
That's a great question because I should be able to count that high, but it's definitely over 2,000 at this point. And when I say 2,000, I mean like in a very meaningful engagement. More than 8 hours is usually what we qualify as a meaningful engagement.
Fantastic.
A lot of pop-up things.
How do we move things virtually? Because you had a great summer virtual program this summer, and that's why I reached out to you.
Yeah, okay, so we moved fully virtual. We did everything in person prior to the pandemic. That thing hit and we were like, uh-oh, we gotta figure things out. We pivoted. So again, I mentioned earlier, like, we drink our own Kool-Aid. We did the same thing. And so we were dealt a new hand, and I had to figure that out. You're like, no, that's not it. And so we had to figure things out. We pivoted virtually. We used tools like Zoom, Slack, and Google Drive for pretty much everything that we use. And we're able to really successfully see that our experiences maintained that high level engagement, enthusiasm, and energy. Everything we do has a tone, a brand, and we want to make sure that translates really well. So a couple of tips I can give everyone out there. Make sure that you introduce a certain dynamic flow to your presentations and engagements if you're working with anyone virtually. Do some things that are full groups, some things that are small groups, some things that are individual. Try to weave those in and throughout. Keep things short, snappy. I did all of this without any slides for you. I just had a couple of chicken scratch notes. That was a different dynamic than I'm used to, actually. So I put myself on the spot to think a little bit differently today. And I think that really translates well for young talent especially. And we kept things lively by all of a sudden we'd be like, oh, here's a guest speaker, and they're gonna like play some music for you for 5 minutes. Like weird little things that just made it a meaningful, memorable experience.
Great. Last question. Are you also going through an accelerator too right now, or what are you doing with the Commons from a corporate point of view?
Yes, okay, so we work with a lot of different groups of people at this point. We've got some high school partners, college partners, and a lot of corporate partners. We do special work for all those different groups. We run internal corporate accelerators, which boosts that culture of innovation, working closely with the HR departments. Professional development meets innovation. But then we're able to say, hey, we've got all these awesome talent pipeline pathways for you with all of our talent partners. So we can work closely to bring those students into these engagements and make sure that we're connecting folks in meaningful ways like mentor relationships and all of that. And that back and forth allows us to be a creative partner with our corporate partners. And so we've got a lot of different programs in our toolbox that we get to pull out and say, this would fit perfectly for the goals that you have and what students need, right? That user experience for them. And as we like to frame up who we are and how we operate, I think a nice snappy way for everybody that's listening be to think of it like a chamber of commerce, but for diverse growth-minded talent. And that's where the shift comes. Your normal chamber of commerce, that's businesses looking for their economic growth. We work with businesses and academia to see to individual talent growth across the board.
Great. And roughly how many corporate partners? I know I've been to some of your demo days.
Yeah.
That one has been to some of your demo days in the past too. And we got to meet you through Cassandra. So
yeah, this room is well experienced with our program, and that's amazing. Yes.
Actually, I would say that my interactions with the Commons allowed me to have this entire staff that's putting on the SelectChicago program.
Okay, that's amazing.
Happy to give you a testimony.
Case study, yeah, right? How many corporate partners? We've, because we also work we've done work in Akron, Ohio, so in Madison, Green Bay, Sheboygan, Beloit, Kenosha. It kind of expands outward, but we've got a short list of 50 plus companies that we've worked very closely with, and it extends further when we think of like shorter engagements with other organizations.
Great.
Yeah.
How best can they reach out to you? Because I want to definitely, you know how much I love your program, so I want to
Thank you,
make
Michael.
sure that we can get as many people focused to you as we can.
Yeah, well, we have our website, thecommonswi.com, WI like Wisconsin. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Joe Peschel, Poeschl on LinkedIn. Please feel free to share that if there's materials that go out with this. But yeah, looking forward to connecting with anyone, answering any questions that you might have.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Michael.
I want to give you a couple of our Select Chicago hats.
Oh my
bring out
God,
to your
yes.
friends.
You know what's funny is today is like all of them?
Yeah.
Like I could wear all three. This is one of the first days that I have not been wearing a hat. And so I actually I've been growing out my hair, and I did my hair this morning, and it was really weird. And I asked my wife, I'm like, do I look weird? She's like, well, kind of, but only because I haven't seen you in a long time not wearing a hat.
Right.
So this is good.
Fantastic. Well, again,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
We're gonna
let's
do
do that. We're good.
And then we're going to go slide right into the next session. So this is great.
Perfect.